A lot of coaches that I know struggle with getting past this 100K mark. They're making a living there, but they just can't seem to cross that point. What do you
Mhm.
think is like going on there? How do
Yes.
you get overcome it?
The beautiful thing about your question is we could put that for relationships. We could fill in the gap for parenting, et cetera, and it all comes down to one thing, which is building somatic capacity for that which we say we want. So my work, even with coaches, right? I work with thousands of coaches, and I've been in this space since 2005. Number one thing I've seen that blocks people from experiencing the type of abundance they want to experience is they haven't built a somatic body that can hold the number or the relationship or the way they want to be. And just to break that down a little further, they don't have the capacity or the range to hold it. Their mind is saying it, but we're threefold beings: body, mind, and soul. And most people do a bunch of mindset work, but they never open up the somatic capacity to connect the mind and the body. So for me, the work that I do with people is around helping heal the nervous system and identity work by way of looking at the shadows. Because there's usually something that they've disowned or repressed or made wrong or bad that is a part of what's blocking the next evolution.
So can we kind of bring it to a real life
Mm-hmm.
practical sense? First of all, what does that word somatic mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I hear that word a lot, but
It means the
what
wisdom
does
of
that
the body.
mean?
So,
Okay.
so the soma means body, and somatic means the wisdom of the body. And there is so much research, and it's now all catching up that the body keeps score. That the mind, the body remembers what the mind forgets. And so, a lot of people, for instance, there was this whole craze around attachment theory and anxiously attached versus this, that, and the other. All of that is amazing, but where it comes from, what's under it, is the body had an experience where it went into fight, flight, freeze, or appease and never came out of that. And then that child or young person then had another one of those things happen, and another, and another, and another. And now we've stacked all of this trauma and shame and guilt in this one little body, and then we form a personality around it, and then we say, no, I'm just shy, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. But the truth is that's not who you are. It's who you became as a safety strategy. So a big part of my work is just cutting the cords from all the safety strategies that people have taken on in childhood and giving the body the signal that it's safe again, so that there's spaciousness and energetic real estate for them to build the mansion and the empire that they desire. Now, I'm going to give you an example from me. In 2013, I was making $36,000 a year living with my mom. At that point, I knew enough to know that I had been doing all this mindset work and yet something wasn't clicking. So I moved in with my mom, and I used all the money I had that I was using for rent and everything else to invest in workshops. I was reading every book I could get my hand on, and I was putting myself in these immersive scenarios where I could bring up the stuff that I didn't want to look at. And what I found was that I had this whole identity from childhood that was still like creeping in the back, keeping me from breaking through, because I was put in special education. So when I was, I think 6 or 7, they put me in special needs classes. And the children that were in those classes had Down syndrome and Asperger's and things of that nature. And while, I wasn't necessarily this standardized regular kid, you can imagine what I was making up about me if the kids in my class have Asperger's and Down syndrome. So the story that I held on to, the safety strategy that I took, was I'll be an out of the way kid because I'm a burden. I'm a burden, right? So I don't want to be more of a burden because I'm already dumb and in the dumb kid classes. And so no matter how hard I tried, I always felt like an imposter. I always felt like, those are the smart people in college, but I'm not supposed to be here. These are the big coaches that make it in the world, but I'll never make it because I'm not like them. And so when I found this seed that had become a cancer in my consciousness, in my body, I began working on cutting that cord. And as I did, 2013 and 2014, I went from $36,000 to $150K. The next year I went from 150K to 300. The next year I went from 300 to 600. The next year I went from 600 to 1.2 million. The next year I went from 1.2 million to 2 million, and it just kept going. I was dope as hell 3 months before that happened. You get what I'm saying? Like, I had always been awesome, but something clicked. And the thing that clicked wasn't more mindset. It was me going into the shame and the guilt and the trauma and that was lodged in my body and feeling it all and saying, game the fuck on, let's go. And that spaciousness created everything.
That's okay. I have two questions there. So you said you've been doing the whole the mindset stuff before that, and then this is like when you started going to the workshops and things like that. So what's the difference between the mindset stuff and what you actually did, and how does that relate to what you do now? I guess the work that you do now.
Yes.
And then I'll come back to this second question, which is, how does it show up different? Like, because you said you knew all this stuff already before. You were dope as hell before. How does it show up differently, like, in the real world? Like, but that's the second part of the question. First is, what was the difference in the mindset stuff versus workshops? Yeah.
So, and hear me loud and clear. The mindset stuff is super important. It's just not the end all be all. We have to have mindset work. However, for instance, for me, I went and got NLP certified, and I went to Tony Robbins events and all these other things. And I was just working on like having a bulletproof mindset and saying affirmations and looking at a vision board and all of that stuff. But the truth was that my identity underneath all of that was I'm the screw up. I'm the throwaway kid. I'm the dummy. I'm the imposter. And so on the top layer, it's like somebody who says a bunch of stuff, but something in you is like, nah, that doesn't match. Energetically, that doesn't feel true. So all that work was beautiful and important, but it wasn't until I went into the ugly parts and the scary parts that I was actually free. And my body felt free. Because and all humans do this, there's not a human on the planet that doesn't have this occur. When we find ourselves in high stress situations, our reptilian brain comes forward, the amygdala in our brain fires off, the reptilian brains come forward and says, fight, run, freeze, or just like be a deer and like, don't eat me, you fawn, right? And no big deal in the caveman days when that would happen, once every week. But that's been happening for most people 50 times a day. And so the big piece is that when we have these scary moments that send us into stress response, if we don't give the body the signal that it's safe again, if we don't breathe into it, if we don't give it voice, if we don't actually cry, if we don't actually feel all the anger, if we don't actually allow ourselves to shake it out and like breathe deep into our bodies, then that just gets lodged and stuck and trapped in the body. And then over time, you walk around really tight. You ever met somebody like that where they're like, you're like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, I'm fine. And you're like, I don't know if you're fine.
I think I'm like that sometimes.
Yes, bro. Yes. So just to tie that to the work that I do. So I have two things that I do. I have something called the Spiritual Millionaire Academy, where we work on this online, and it's for people who want to make a bunch of money, but also know that the path to that money is leaning into their shadows and their nervous system. And then I have a workshop that I've been doing for the last 10 years with my wife called the Bridge Experience. And the Bridge Experience is basically like ayahuasca meets a safe room meets like a heart surgery meets a Spartan race. So it is a nervous system and somatic based embodiment workshop where we put people in very high stress situations, and then we teach them how to reclaim their power, breathe through it, and then build on top in ways that they didn't think were possible.
How do you put them into that high stress? Is it like Navy SEALs training? Like, how do you put
Sort
them
of.
in the high stress?
Sort of. A lot of people feel that way. There are times when people are like, "Oh my God, I wouldn't have come to this if I would have known." And then they're like, "It's the best thing I've ever done in my life." So it's kind of like, without giving it away, because that's the element of surprise is the best part.
Okay.
We put people in scenarios with other people and with themselves where we give them opportunities to lean into scary, challenging things. So, for instance, and this is an optional.
So it's like an emotionally
Yes,
stressed, not like a physical stress. But...
a little both, a little bit of both.
Okay.
So, I don't want to give too much away, but I'll say we have one exercise
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
where we put people in arcs all over the room. And in those arcs, people have an opportunity to share their deepest, darkest secrets, the scariest stuff they've ever been through, ever, the worst things they've ever done to another person, just all the hardest things. And then what the body has a tendency to do, and this happens all the time. Now that I say it, you'll notice it. Whenever someone starts to feel or lean into something that's hard for them, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll collapse. They'll go, "Oh my God. I'm sorry." They'll say, "I'm sorry." They'll cover their eyes, their face. They'll, try to hurry up. And people who are uncomfortable with other people feeling all of their emotions will hand them tissue. They'll rub their backs. They'll say, "Oh, it's okay." Right? What they're really saying is please hurry up and stop crying. Please hurry up and stop screaming. Please hurry up and stop feeling what you're feeling because it's uncomfortable for me. And so in our workshops, we say, no. We're going to go all the way into it, but we're going to cry in our somatic dignity. We're going to open instead of close. We're going to reclaim our power from that molestation or that rape or that thing. And we're going to go into it, but from our power. Because the body doesn't know the distinction between 7 years ago or 7 seconds ago. So if a lot of times why therapy does not work for people is because they're recycling the past without rewriting it. What we do is we'll go into the past, but we'll rewrite it in the body's, in the nervous system, not in the mind, in the nervous system. You following?
Yeah.
It's
What
deep.
is that? Is that something that is like you do it once and it's reset, or is that some sort of a practice that you have to continue to do to get better? Or like, how does that work?
Both. The answer is both. We have had so many straight up miracles. There are big time influencers and people, if I said their name right now, you would know who they are. But we've had people come into those rooms who want to get pregnant, but they haven't had a period for 17 years. And on day 2, they start bleeding, right? And it's because the body's been in a stress response for 7. So what they do and what humans do is we just stack on top of the stress and we go, no, I'll just eat. No, I'll just sext. No, I'll just shop. No, I'll just make more money, right? Oftentimes, I have friends with private jets. I have ridiculously rich friends. I'm almost always the richest person in the room, not because of my money, but because of how free I am. Does that make sense? So we've had people who have had diseases that they thought could not be cured. And they come back to us 7 days later, or they'll come back to the next weekend and they say, I wasn't even going to come, but I went to the doctor and they looked for the tumor and it was gone. And we're like, oh my God. And again, there's so much science that backs all of this. We've been doing it for so long and tweaking and testing and polishing that we have it down to a science. And yes, miracles can happen when the body has spaciousness. And yes, over time, if you continuously open when you want to close, this is why we put people, this is why it's multiple days. So there's the first weekend and the second weekend. We tell people to do both because if you immerse yourself in a world for a specific amount of days and you keep opening in the face of the hardest stuff you've ever faced, then when you walk out of these doors, everything else feels like that. Because you've already done the hardest, scariest things there is to do. Does that make sense?
I want to kind of talk about, like, before when I asked the question of the coach that's, let's say, stuck at 100K. Let's say for you you were stuck at 36K,
Yep.
right? How does that show up? Like, what's the thing that's like little things that you're doing that's causing it to not go past that versus
Yeah.
after you've done the work? How does it show up differently? And
Correct.
like what in a so we can kind of see a picture of like how it makes a difference. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So again, I coach coaches right now, and I see this all the time. I recently coached someone, I won't say his name, who had been hiding that he was gay from his father for his whole life, because his father said something really mean about gay people when he was like 9 years old. This man is now 40. For, let's call it, the last 5 years, he's wanted to be a coach and make money. But again, going back to it, most people wouldn't know. I know because I've done this work and I've done it on myself, that the thing that's blocking him from the 100K and beyond has nothing to do with the strategies and tactics that he's using, and everything to do with the part of him that feels shame and like an imposter because he can't even come out to his own father. He can't fully be himself. How can you teach somebody empowerment and authenticity when you're fucking hiding? You follow what I'm saying? So it's going to energetically come off. You can do all the tricks. I know all the tricks. I can help people do
You
the
mean like
tricks.
when like people can feel it when like they watch his
Yes,
content or something,
correct.
or
They
they're
can
talking to
feel
him
it.
or something like
He
that?
can
Okay.
feel it. He will sabotage it, even out of a fear of getting too big. Because what if I make a bunch of money and things get big, and then I have to face off with this lie that I've been living? Again, when you've been in this work for as long as I have, I know everybody has secrets. Everybody has blood on their hands. Everybody has stuff that they haven't faced off with, even if they're the dopest person in the world. And I also know people who make more. They make $500,000. I'll give you another example. So I work with this girl who's amazing. You can find her on the internet right now. And I have a bunch of success stories like this. Her name is Rebecca Antonucci. And Rebecca Beck came to me in 2017. She did Bridge, the workshop. And then she did the next piece. And then she hired me as her coach. And one of the first things we worked on was she had herpes. And the herpes not only was affecting how she showed up online, but it was affecting how she dated people. It was affecting her confidence. It was affecting how she could feel loved. And so we started working on all these things. And then eventually I said, hey, if what's most personal is most universal, what's most personal is most universal. So if you're struggling and feeling like you don't have confidence and feel dirty and unworthy of feeling loved, guaranteed, know statistically that almost half the population has some type of version of that. Guaranteed, those women need a hero. They need somebody to look towards. So we set it all up and I said, okay, it's time to come out. Well, she came out, and right now she has a $500,000 business. And it's all these women who have herpes who she is the hero to. And guess what? Her herpes is not detectable anymore. It's gone.
Do you think there's something about sharing those vulnerable things openly? Like, is it
You don't have
also
to.
like I have a question. So,
Mhm.
like the guy that's gay, like
Mhm.
closeted gay, and the herpes, like that, it's kind of like clear. What are some other things? Because like I'm sure, because I do storytelling workshops, and most people are like, no, I don't know, I don't have anything, or I'm not hiding anything, or I'm like I am being vulnerable, like
Yes.
so like for somebody like that feel
Huh?
like, oh, I don't have anything that to hide, or I don't have any skeletons in the closet. What are some example things maybe that we're not looking at, like that we're
100%.
hiding? Yeah.
Again, all of this stuff comes up in my work all the time. And it could be as simple as, again, somebody will identify as shy or quiet, right? And when we really get down to it, the shy or quiet or reserved part of them was a strategy so that they didn't get harmed as a child or they didn't get bullied anymore. And so I'll say to them, is it true that you want to show up on the video like that? And they're like, no. Okay, so how do you want to show up? Well, authentic and open and X, Y, and Z. Okay, so what blocks that? Well, I just don't want to just come off stupid or X, Y, and Z or be judged. And what it comes down to is they have a fear of their cousins judging them, the people from high school talking crap about them. They have, I worked with a woman recently who just didn't want to bring shame to the family. So the good girl, right? The good girl mask that she had been wearing all her life, the good, perfect Christian white girl mask was blocking her from authenticity. It was blocking her from sharing her story. It was blocking her from being in her body and being in her passion. So some of my biggest work, and I say this all the time to my clients, some of our biggest work is cutting the cord from our parents. Because the first cord gives us life. The second cord holds us back from life. And I've worked with people literally yesterday who are in their 40s, who are still trying to get it right for their dead parents. And I'm like, you are not living your life. You're living someone else's idea about what your life should be, whether you or understand that there is trauma there. I'll give you another example. I worked with a guy many years back who in our workshops, we dance and we get in our bodies and we do really cool stuff. And he was so tight and rigid. And we had eventually ended up coaching one-on-one behind the scenes. And he shared with me that when he was like 10, he was in the living room and there was a commercial on of the ballet that was coming into town. And his dad was on the couch and his two brothers were there. And he got up and he started dancing. And his dad looked at him and said, "Sit down. Only little faggots dance like." Well, 30 years later, he didn't dance. And that affects his relationships. Because the woman he was dating at the time was like, "I just want to feel your animal, your masculine containment, your juice." But he was so rigid and stoic because of that comment. Now you could say, "Oh, that's not a trauma. That's a big trauma, bro." Now I'll take it even deeper for you. I grew up in LA, and the school I went to was basically 25% Filipino, 25% Samoan, 25% Black, and 25% Mexican. And I grew up like hanging out with all of them, but specifically for a good portion of it, it was just Asian people, right? And my ex-girlfriend...
You grew up in California, right?
Yes. My ex-girlfriend's...
Yeah, I grew up in California too.
Did you? Where?
In Torrance.
Bro, no way.
Yeah.
Me too, in Harbor City.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I went to South High School.
What? South Lawrence, yes. That's crazy. I went to San Pedro, Carson, Norbonne, Gardena, Westchester. That's crazy.
Oh, you moved around a lot.
I did. It's all South Bay stuff, bro.
Yeah.
Wild. I love that. I used to bike to the Del Amo Mall all the time as a kid.
Me too.
Yes, bro. Let's go. Wait, how old are you?
I'm 40.
Bro, we're the same age.
Really?
That's great. We probably have seen each other as kids.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
wild.
Maybe we bumped into each other in Del Amo.
Exactly. So when I work with some of my Asian clients and friends, I'll break down, and this is for everybody. So there's four components, four aspects of what it means to be human. We are biological beings. We are linguistic beings. We are social and historical beings, and we are quantum beings. That's the four. Now I'm going to go to number 3 because number 3 informs the other two. Social and historical beings, meaning we were born into beliefs and interpretations. Now you're going to get this because you grew up in the same neighborhood, same area as I did. My whole life, I lived within a few miles of the beach. And yet I never got in the ocean and never surfed because social and historical beings born into beliefs and interpretations, Black people don't swim. Black people don't surf. Black people don't X. Black people don't Y. You follow what I'm saying here? So because of the social programming that I received as a child, I did not get into that ocean. Now, my ex-girlfriend's Korean. I have Filipino ex-girlfriends. I have the whole gamut of like across the board. And I would be in these families, right? Living in there and having dinner with them and all that stuff. And across the board, whether it was Chinese, Filipino, Korean, the one thing all of them had in common, and you tell me if this is true, was grades were so important. Achieving and grades very high in an Asian family. Well, how do we think that would affect someone who, let's say, happens to be Korean, but they want to play the Spanish guitar, right? would that kid growing up in this social and historical programming feel free to be a life coach when their whole life they've been told you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to take over the family business? You get what I'm saying? So again, going back to the coaching piece, some people don't understand that the social and historical programming they grew up in, the soup they grew up in, is trauma in itself, because there was no freedom. There was no opportunity. It's this is what you do. This is what you don't do. So even if I'm moonlighting as a coach, but I still have this programming back here saying, no, you are the firstborn Asian son. You do this, you do this, you do this. Oh my God. You think I'm going to be able to fully go into this if I have that programming still sitting there? So that's some of the work that I do with people all the time, is like pulling out.
That's true. Actually, like I haven't thought of it, but I can see how like Asian people, if they make content, they're in the back of their mind, they're probably thinking like, oh, I don't want my mom to see me say this, or something like that.
Bro, it's deep, man. It's such a trippy thing. Every culture has them, right? So our job is to go, okay, how much of this do I want to keep? Because it's not all bad. Right? There's beautiful things about every culture. How much of this do I want to keep? And how much of it do I want to get rid of so that I can build for the next generation? Because if I'm a slave to my parents think, then I'll never fully go where I need to go.
Yeah. I want to ask you something before you said about the social thing, like the guy who's dancing or something like that. So I would say I lived like the first 30 of my years of my life like that, where I was like very self-conscious of how other people look at me and things like that. And if I look at your content, like it seems like the videos that do the best are the ones where you can see the emotion in the way you speak, the passion and things like that. Now, when I talk to like content creators in my community and I tell them to share a story, like, and we're one-on-one, nobody's watching, they're like very expressive, and like I can see they're like so charismatic, and then all of a sudden, like, I put a camera on them, or I'll tell them to share and then they almost become a different person, like telling the same story in a different way, right?
Yes.
So is that kind of how an example of like how did you show up on camera before this whole somatic work, and then
Yes, that's it. You're nailing it, bro. That's exactly it. That's another example of why someone can't break that ceiling, because it's not actually authentic to them, and because they're making it about themselves and not the person they're serving. So one of the things that I'm constantly helping clients understand is like, this isn't about you. You're a vessel. Your job is to receive and give, not to receive and then put it through a filter and make sure it's cute and make sure it's perfect and make sure, my cousins won't judge me, and make sure. Receive and give the gift. Let the universe take care of the rest. But when you make it about you, then you're robbing everybody, self included. And so people are, they're self-absorbed in the wrong way. And that self-absorption is because they're trying to avoid shame. They're trying to avoid shame. So you can't be authentic and avoid shame. At some point, you have to say, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I say this all the time. The fruit doesn't belong to the tree. The fruit belongs to the ecosystem. It belongs to the rabbits. It belongs to the worms. It belongs to the deer that come by and eat it. It is not the trees. The tree's job is just to go, move through me, God. Let's go. And the more you give the fruit, the more fruit grows. I had nothing. And yet, the one thing I did have is an understanding that I was already, and this is the piece I want every coach, healer, light worker, therapist to hear this loud and clear. Before I ever had $1 million in my bank account, I had it in consciousness. I offered the vibration before I ever had it. When I was a surf instructor in LA teaching in Venice Beach, I felt like the richest dude on the planet. Not because of the money that was in my account, but because of how much I understood that I might not ever get this day back. And like, this is a part of a bigger journey. And there's going to be a point when I have kids and a wife and responsibilities and all this stuff. So I'm going to ride this wave to the best of my ability. I'm going to love this moment while I'm on the grind, moving up towards something. I say it all the time. To me, What you seek is seeking you. What you want wants you. There's no mistakes in God. If it was put in your heart to bring forward, it's yours to bring forward. Now the rest of it is just inevitability. Take the steps. Take the steps you're taking. Love the steps you're taking. Because you know where you're going. You already caught it.
You know, like what you just said is so, because I'm in this like marketing, personal branding space. Sometimes I feel like the message is a little bit conflicting, because like what you're saying is you know you're in the surfboard, like you already feel like you have $1 million, right? That, and I think that is the message, and most people I guess say that, but I don't really know if how many people believe it, because
Yes.
the whole thing about the secret and people, the abundance, and like I think people are so, I almost feel like that puts more spotlight on the money and like being rich and all success and all of that, that most coaches that I see, okay, I'll give you here's this is something I've been recently thinking about. Like my wife, in my opinion, has like the least ego out of everyone I know. She's the happiest person I know,
Mm-hmm.
and she's like the most selfless person. Like she's not like really thinking about herself. Like she's always like thinking about doing. My wife has never done any self-help work, or she's never read The Secret, and she doesn't know anything about that. She's
Yeah.
just, so
Dope.
do you feel like it's almost like by reading The Secret and going to Tony Robbins seminar, does it almost make me misunderstand
Yes.
and try
Yes.
to chase that? Does that,
Yes.
does you
It makes total sense, bro. So here's the thing. There's no absolute in this conversation, but I have said the exact same things you've said, which is some people they just get it. That some people, they just get it. They have no part of them that wants to be a kabillionaire and be known by everybody. And they're just like, I just want to like love my life and my parents and my kid and my husband. And I want to just enjoy this moment. So your wife is one of those people. She gets it. She gets it. Now it's not an either or. However, yes, sometimes the people who do the work are the most miserable. I tell my clients this all the time. I'm like, yo, if you're not having fun and celebrating, you missed the whole point. If your whole setup is this amount is going to make me good, right, better, amazing, proven, X, Y, and Z, then you're a slave to that thing. You are a sophisticated slave. Again, I work with dudes. I've worked with people who have $100 million. And on the sales call, I say, I'm richer than you. And you know it, right? My dick's bigger. And not like actual, I don't care about what our size of our dicks are, but you know it. You know it and I know it. And you know why, right? There's a book called Healing the Shame That Binds You. And he talks about how the screw up, the person who messes everything up, and the overachiever often have the same toxic shame living under what they're doing. One of them takes the strategy of, I'll make so much money and get all this stuff so you'll never see how ugly I feel, how alone I feel. The other one says, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything because I feel so ugly and so alone and so messed up. It's the same toxic stress and shame under it, but different strategies. Our work as human beings is to really check in with how I'm being on a day-to-day basis. Again, I'm not saying this to like be like I'm better than anybody. I just practice more. I practice loving my life as it is. And you know what's dope? I've seen people die, bloody deaths. And that's been one of the best gifts I've ever been given. Because when you watch a person die, it changes how you live. You literally go, oh my goodness. They didn't care about a 401k. They didn't care about likes on Instagram. They didn't care about anything. All they cared about in that moment was one more breath, one more opportunity to say, I love you. One more moment to hug the people they care about. No shit's given about money in that moment. And so money is a byproduct. Money is a side effect of living
I see what you mean.
from the juice of the truth of your tree. Everybody's tree is different, but the fruit on that tree doesn't belong to any of us.
You know, like now that you're talking about this, kind of going flashback in my business, because I own an agency in New York, And there was a moment, I think, a shift that happened for me where I started looking at money as just a number and not like, like what. And I think maybe I'm answering my own question. I think this is why people get stuck at 100K is because if they've only made 100, like for me, there was a time when I've only charged this much,
Yeah.
and I couldn't even fathom charging more than that. Like, and I couldn't even send out, like every time I try to send out a proposal that's more than that or something, like I would almost stop myself. And I'm like, no.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually voluntarily not do it because of some fear that
Yes.
says like, okay, there's no way they're gonna sign this.
Yes.
But
Yes.
then like I think I was like forced to do it at some point, and everybody just started saying yes, yes, yes. And then before I knew it, like I stopped looking at it like on money. Like this is just numbers.
That. So, bro, again, this is why immersion is so important, because you were so immersed in it that it became an of course. In my book, I have a new book that just came out, Spiritual Millionaire. I have a whole chapter and section in this book about creating an of course in your body. Right? So I'll give you an example. If the lights went out in wherever you are right now, what's the likelihood? I'm talking about pitch black and it's in your room. Let's say you're in your own house. It's pitch black. What's the likelihood that you can get to the switch to turn the light back on?
100%.
Correct. Why? Why is it
Because I know
100?
where it is.
Correct. Because you've walked the path so many times that it's now, and of course, there's no doubt, no static on the line, no resistance. Everything in you says, of course, right? It's the same thing for a podcast. It's the same thing for marriage. It's the same thing for parenting, right? I have 4 kids. Everybody's first kid, they're like, oh, God. You're looking at the kid all night. You're like, are they breathing? Are they okay? Oh, my God. Second kid, you're like, all right, I'm sure they're good. Third kid, you're like, hey, that motherfucker's fine. We're good to go. Fourth kid, you're like, just go play with each other. Leave me alone, right? There's something that happens where you're like, oh, I got it now. I got it. Right? And that's what you did. You were the living embodiment of creating an of course in your body around money and around proposals and around like owning your worth and understanding that money is just like this in between, right? Most people think that the money is the food. The money is the spoon. The money is the spoon and the fork. The food is the connection, is the love, is the play, is the opportunity to dance in your gifts. The money is a shovel. The food is the dirt and the rose bush that you put into the ground to let the law do its thing. Bro, I know you get this, but I've been living this stuff so much. It's crazy.
So is that what you mean by spiritual millionaire? It's like you're millionaire with the food, not the spoon.
All right. Yes, homie. Yes, exactly.
So you talked about your kids. I know you talk about family a lot. What do you think about like this whole right now? I feel like less and less people are having kids. Like in Korea, there's like this huge epidemic of like people not like they're actually saying the population is going down now. Yeah. So what's your thought on all of that? Like why do you think it's happening? Like is that a good thing, bad thing?
Yeah. I try my best not to live in any good, bad, right, or wrong, and just to notice and be with what is. However, I think that the price of living and the wages versus how much things cost has pushed people into a conversation around can they even do it? That's one. 2, I think that the products that have been approved for us to put onto our skin and into our mouths and into our bodies are so toxic that it's causing people to have less testosterone and have their hormones in a particular way. And so it's just harder to have babies in general because people have such toxic loads in their bodies. I also think that there's an entire movement to over-feminize men and hyper-masculinize women that makes the polarity really tricky. And then you add in Tinder and Bumble and all the swiping and like grocery shopping for, sex. It takes away this magical thing around building with one person and creating life. And so more power to anybody, whatever choice they make. I'll say this. If I came back 100 more times, I would want kids in every lifetime. It is the greatest gift I've ever been given. There's nothing more transformative, more fulfilling. I've done not every drug, but I've done a lot. And there's no high that has ever come close to the high that I have on a regular Tuesday or Wednesday morning doing school drop-offs and playing na boo boo before they run into school. Right? Like that's like Molly and LSD and mushrooms and ayahuasca and everything else in one. And I do it every day, 100 times a day. It is the best thing ever. And I love it.
Let's talk about that a little bit. How has that, having children, do you think changed you? And what would you say to people that are like, me and my wife, we don't have kids. We kind of waited, and we got to a point where we were kind of like,
yep,
now we're too old. And so like, what would you say to people that I guess like kind of like us that can't have kids or something like that? Like what's somewhere else where we can find that's
with each other?
Kind of, I guess maybe sensitive. Yeah.
With each other. Like bottom line is we're social beings, period. We're social beings. We're born from a womb. And the moment we come out of that womb, there's hands going up. We got you right up to a person. And then we pass you to another person and then another person. And then the aunties come and the grandmas come and everybody's kissing. And it's people, right? So the love is transferable. We just want to feel alive and like we matter to someone. I don't think everybody should have kids. I think that you should have a license to have kids because some people are shitty parents and, or I'll say they're not actually parents. They're just like maintaining.
What does it take to be a good parent?
Presence, desire, curiosity, a willingness to be led by the kids. You know, last night we put them all to bed and my 7-year-old son, Kingston, he came in the room like 5 times. And I said, go back to sleep, buddy. And then he came in the last time and he was trying not to laugh so hard, but he knew he was coming in with this dumb lie. And he was like, I have growing pains. And he's like trying to hide his face. And I'm like, hey, I see what you're doing. And he jumps in the bed. He puts the covers over himself. And we just all start laughing. And I'm like, you just want to sleep in our bed, bro. Just say you want to sleep in our bed. And he just bust up laughing. And it's these moments, right? Like I have 2 dogs as well. And the dogs are awesome and beautiful and cute and funny. I think it's just about experiencing life with other beings. There is something primal about continuing the species that I think is beyond our sort of cognitive prefrontal cortex. It's like literally primal.
Yeah. It's like subconsciously, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Just keep the bloodline going, right? There's something in that. And it's the last story I'll tell you. 2 years ago, I went into the woods for 8 days. And 4 of those days, I was by myself and I only had 2 gallons of water. So 4 days, 2 gallons of water, no tent. I'm sleeping. I'm out in the night. Nothing. And some people would call this a vision quest.
It's like
I'll call it a vision fast. And I could not leave a certain area. So I was just sort of boxed in to this part of the woods, nobody's around, just me and the spiders and the ants and the coyotes and the birds at dawn and this beautiful just time. What really hit me was there was all these different ant mounds inside of the ecosystem. And then there was the birds and then the worms and the coyotes at dawn, right when the sun was setting, and the birds at dawn. And everybody had their part to play in this dope ecosystem. At one point I was thinking about it. It's like, yo, we're kind of like these ant mounds, right? Inside of our little mound, these ants think this is the entire world, right? They have Gucci ant mound purses and, you know, they got their G-Wagons and their cool hats and houses and they go to the Dodgers game and all that stuff inside their little mound. But the truth is that there's other mounds, 1, 2, any given moment, somebody could walk by, step on that mound, and it's over. We're only here at some level for a short amount of time. And most of the stuff we think matters is bullshit. So for me, whether you have kids, don't have kids, want to have kids, don't want to have kids, it's just, are you experiencing life to the fullest? Are you enjoying the process? Are
Mm,
you riding the wave in your ant mound and not giving the power over to the ant mound Gucci purse or the ant mound,
mm,
car or house? Because
mm.
that stuff is transitory. You don't get to take it with you. Right? The juiciest parts of life have nothing to do with the external stuff and everything to do with how much love we feel in any given moment.
It's so like it's so easier said than done, right? Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
because I've thought about things like that too, but then in real, like I saw a video that you posted a couple months ago where you were reacting to this girl who was talking about like she's like hyper aware of the fact that like nothing is real and like things like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And I kind of went through that phase too, like when I was younger. And
Yeah.
what it did for me actually is made me more nihilistic and more
Mm.
depressed. And it didn't make me kind of like what you were saying, like none of this matters, so let's be present and let's enjoy it. It made me
Yes.
more like, oh, none of this matters, so what's the point?
Yep.
Do you understand
Yep.
what I mean? And then now, so like I kind of like it took me 10 years to kind of get over that and be like, okay, none of it matters. So actually, like, so for example, like what you said about G Wagon or something like that.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. So let me just enjoy the G Wagon.
Correct. Somebody's got to drive a Ferrari. Somebody's got to drive a G-Wagon. It's all materials, and all the materials want to be
Yeah.
used. They want somebody to drive it. They want somebody to look at it. This shirt wanted somebody to buy it and wear it, and I said yes. Same thing with that sweater and that microphone. That needed and had to be in your house, not mine. Right? So the materials, everything has consciousness. We know that. If we take a microphone and we put it over your sweater, we put it over the microphone, we put it over your hat, we put it over you, we break you down, break you down, break you down, break you down. There's nothing, just molecules and cells dancing. Right? Okay, so that's weird. Okay, so if there's no thing, but it looks like these are solid masses, then all of the things, everything is that. And therefore, the value I place on X, Y, or Z, is it marketing? Is it clever marketing? Or is it actually dope? Right? Like I have I have $400 or more cars at this house right now. I have a 1965
Nice.
Stingray right there on the other side of this camera. I have a 2019 G-Wagon on the other side of this door. I have a 1968 Chevy C10 454 big block, and I have a souped up Suburban, right? Each one of those has value in a different way. The market dictates the value, but like for instance, the G-Wagon is really fast and dope as hell to go off-road. So does it make me look a certain way when I pull up to the restaurant? Yes, it does. Do I enjoy that from an egoic standpoint? Absolutely. And I'm smart enough to know that it's smoke and mirrors. I'm smart enough to know that the real value is not in the spoon. The spoon is awesome. I'll use it. The G-Wagon's the
Yeah.
spoon. The value is in the dude that jumps out.
Yeah.
The food is the energy from which I jump out of that car and walk into the restaurant and walk into the school and walk into the speech.
Yeah.
I'm the prize, bro. And I think you get this, but like I feel like I'm a monster in the best way, not because I'm special, but because God has never made a mistake. So how dare I look at a rainbow or a puppy and go, oh my God? How dare I go to Niagara Falls or someplace and go, wow, look at how amazing these mountains are, and not look at me and think the exact same thing.
Yeah. Like I love how you mentioned that it's like it's just a spoon, and it's like I almost feel like because I used to be one of these people that are like I don't want to show off with this with this car or like flying first class or something like that.
Yes.
But it's almost like that's my ego saying that actually. Like if I really didn't care, I wouldn't care that I was,
Yes.
if I like some car, I'll drive it or something like that. It's just the fact that I'm anti that actually means I'm like trying too hard not to show
Yes.
up that way or something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Dude, so true.
The last question I wanted to ask is like kind of like relationship with your wife, right? Like before you were talking about with your children, and the way you explained it was like there's almost kind of like this innocence, like
Mhm.
innocence in a human to human relationship,
Mhm.
which I feel like a lot of times now we don't have, whether it's like at work or with our spouse or whatever it is. A lot of relationship is very like, I don't know, it's like contractual, or it's something like, what do I get out of this, or something like that. And I saw this video you posted where you said that you and your wife like redid your vows marriage, or like you got remarried or something like that. Can you talk about that and why, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
how
we
is it different from yeah.
yeah. So we got a divorce 2 years ago, an energetic divorce, not with the courts, but the relationship we had prior to that had some things in it that we both contributed, but I probably more than her, in my opinion, that weren't working for what we actually needed and desired of each other and of relationship. And so we decided to get a divorce. We decided to break up from that relationship and to redeclare what we wanted relationship to mean and be for us. And so we got rid of the rings. We actually buried them at the temple at Burning Man, and they got burned. So like $20,000 rings just burned in the temple. And then I went and bought new rings and did the whole thing. And what we understood, and I understood, was the ego is very tricky, right? To you all and a lot of places in my life, I had really gotten bigger than the parts of me that felt like a burden, an out of the way kid, et cetera, et cetera. But in my relationship with my wife, I still was operating from this wounded little boy that was mad at her for not kissing me enough or hugging me enough or telling me she's proud of me enough and X, Y, and Z. And yet I wasn't asking for it ever. The only time she ever heard something like that from me was when I was super mad and we were in an argument. Otherwise, anytime she brought something to me, I would just try to do better. And I go, oh, I'll wash more dishes. I'll change more diapers. I'll do X, Y, and Z. And it was this sort of the same game I played as a child with my mom, where she was so stressed out that I didn't want to add to her with the burden of me. So I just tried to do better. Well, this is like a nice guy strategy that was still hiding in my marriage. And nice guys oftentimes are imposters. It's a fake. It's a ruse. I wasn't being transparent with what I desired. I wasn't being real with what I had as a requirement to be in relationship. And so she couldn't even get close to me. We can't really be intimate if I'm hiding from you. The marriage at some level, was a faulty marriage because I wasn't being fully transparent. And because I loved her so much, I was keeping parts of me repressed and pushed away. But that's not actually love. And I figured this out the hard way. So the second marriage was us declaring a marriage of celebration, a marriage of transparency, a marriage with a culture of apology and just owning stuff and really being curious. I've said this in my workshops. The moment I think I know my wife, our relationship is over because there's no space for anything else but what I know about her. And for about 7 years, I had her boxed in to this thing. So she couldn't be anything else. Cognitive dissonance would kick in and she just would have to be this thing. And the truth was that I had her in the drama triangle where I was the villain, I was the victim and the villain, and she was the hero and the villain in my story. So I had her on a pedestal, but because she wasn't taking care of me in the way I wanted her to, then I made her the villain. And therefore I had to be the victim to this person. And so to me, relationship, again, going back to coaching and everything else, you want to be an amazing coach, work out the nuances of the places where you hide. Get into the cracks and crevices of the stuff that you still repress and figure out ways to get around. I'm going to say something pretty controversial here, but I actually know it's true. This isn't theory. A lot of dudes jack off to porn. A lot. Like an extraordinary amount. And you could say that's just me and being horny. It's not. Hear this loud and clear. They reach towards the porn or the drugs or the more money in the job or whatever it is because they haven't integrated that wild man inside of them. There was no safe space for that. As a child, there was no safe space for that. So I had to do it outside. I had to hide it. So, okay, if I'm hiding it, if I'm hiding the wild man, if I'm hiding the killer, so I can save space, save face, and be a good little Christian boy for mommy, but I go outside and the killer has to come forward. Well, what do you think happens over a 20-year period? The more I hide it,
Yeah, the shame, like the
yes, the shame, and I still have to do it because I can't beat my biology. So a lot of men, they go and find the release outside and they hide it. And I was doing the same, not with porn, but just by hiding it in general. And so the game is to integrate those parts of ourselves, to bring them forward. It's actually sexier to women for them to feel the part of us that can kill, for them to feel the part of us that's animalistic and nasty and big and then to contain it and contain them, that turns them on, not off. And so all of this stuff is a part of what makes us whole soul amazing beings. I don't think I'm amazing because of what I have. I think I'm amazing, one, just by birthright, but also because where I've gone inside of me to be the type of dude that can get on a podcast like this with no script and go into the details of stuff. Right? People come up with their scripts and their bullet points, and that's awesome. But like, I live this every day. You could throw me on a stage at any point. I could wake up at 5 a.m. and I'd be able to deliver because I live it.
One thing that I was curious about is, so is there, it seems like you kind of worked on this in your career, but then there was still this side in your personal relationship with your wife where you were still hiding.
Yes.
And it's like, is that almost like it's because you're looking at one thing differently than the other? Like how does that work? Or is it like because that's the most, I guess, intimate relationship you have?
Yes, it was safer. It was safer for me to do it everywhere else. And everybody has a core wound and core dharma that they have to work through in this lifetime. And one of my biggest wounds was the mother wound. So, of course, my mom's a 5'10", strong-willed Virgo woman. You know what my wife is? A 5'10", strong-willed Virgo woman. How does that even happen, right? Like, people think that they're mother and daughter and not even me. I literally attracted my biggest wounds and fears so that I could face it and transmute it and build on top of it something beautiful. And that's actually what's happening.
I just want to ask one last quick question that popped in my head. Before you were talking about like how people kind of hide that thing and you use the word stoic. So, you know how now there's like this. I think you were talking about the whole masculinity, femininity thing. You know how like now there's like this whole movement of stoicism and how like we have. So, what do you think about that? Is that like not necessarily a good thing? Is that because that kind of conflicts with
Yes.
like letting your.
Here's my truth.
What's your
If you watch little kids, right, if you go to a playground and look at a 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old little boy, you will not see stoicism. You will see a person that's fully alive, willing to cry, willing to elate, enjoy, willing to be like, oh my God, my dick's hard. Like, they'll just be human, right? And then over time, they'll be sold this idea: big boys don't cry. Don't be a little wussy. Be stoic. X, Y, and Z. Keep it together. This is old bullshit, bro. This is Clint Eastwood, Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a thing being sold to us. Again, to me, a real man is alive. He feels all the feelings. Yes, he brings it to his counsel. I have other men that I talk to every day. I'm in men's groups. I'm in spaces. I have coaches. I have people hold stuff with me. But even like this, right? I've been super transparent in here because I'm modeling and demonstrating what it can look like. You can't hurt me with this information because I know who I am. Now, I could get up here and play the game and put on a mask and be like, look how stoic I am. It's a tactic. I've been in this space so long. I've seen people come and go with tactics. You want to be a coach, a thought leader, someone in this world that sticks around for a long time? Be yourself. Fuck their ideas.
Damn right. Yeah, look, can you kind of share with everyone, talk a little bit about your book, where they can find it, where they can find you, how they can work with you?
Yes. I got a new book out, Spiritual Millionaire. You can get that at prestonsmiles.com/book. If you're on Instagram or YouTube or anywhere you get your podcast, just type in at Preston Smiles. And if you want to jump in Spiritual Millionaire Academy, prestonsmiles.com/SMA. And then the Bridge Experience is coming up in Austin. We got quite a few of them in Austin coming up in January, another one in April. They sell out every time because we never go past 100. So if you want in, jump in fast, and it's super affordable. Go to thebridgemethod.org. The Bridge Method.
I'll put all the links in the bottom. I'll send it out. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Everyone, check out his content, his videos. I like. Yeah, Preston like almost feels like a preacher because like it's so the way you speak is so just powerful and passionate, and like you can feel the energy. So
Thanks, bro.
definitely check it out. Thank you all. See you all next week, and cheers, y'all.